So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March 17th, 2025 City Council meeting for South Burlington. Just want to say, Aaron Gobra, okay? I hope everybody's wearing some green and had a chance to have some boiled dinner with some corned beef and cabbage tonight, or yesterday, or the weekend, whatever. We're going to start with item 1, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Lori? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Lori. We'll now have the instructions on exiting the building in case of an emergency and the review of the technology options with Jesse Baker, City Manager.
Thank you. So for those in the room, thank you for joining us. If there's an emergency in the room, you can go out the left or right side of the rear of the auditorium and then turn left or right to get outside. For those participating remotely, thank you for joining us as well. If you'd like to speak during any item on the agenda, you can turn your camera on and the chair will call on you, or you can indicate that you'd like to make a comment in the chat and I will have the chair call on you. Other than that, we are not monitoring the chat for content.
Thank you, Jesse. And then item number 3, which is agenda review, additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items. Are there any proposed tonight?
I would like to propose an addition to the agenda to have a brief discussion about the proposal from UPenn for a study and the possibility of directing Jesse and staff to have conversations with them to explore the possibility.
When would you like to add that? Where in the agenda? Before liquor control? You want to do it earlier?
I would think before liquor control.
Okay, so make it item 10.2.
Can I ask clarification on what the expectation is of putting it on the agenda and maybe not including it in our retreat conversation?
The expectation was, I can get into that when we present it, but Jesse and Tom Daniels have been in touch with each other, and the reason to put it here is to see if staff would like, or if we as counselors would like to have Jesse pursue that conversation to get together information to present to us at our retreat so we can make informed decisions.
Is it getting out ahead of our conversation at the retreat?
It's directly related to our priorities list around growth management.
Okay, I'm fine including on the agenda. It just seems a specific service provider when we haven't had the conversation on what the expectations are for the scope of the project.
I understand. I apologize for the late bringing on of this, but I thought a process was in progress and only found out this afternoon that it wasn't and that this was the way to move forward. So, and I'm leaving tomorrow for 2 weeks, so that's why it was brought up.
So it sounds like this will be like an initial discussion about something that could be discussed at the retreat.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Any problem with that agenda item? No? You okay?
I'm fine including it as an
Okay.
agenda item. I don't know that I could do anything with it because
Right.
we just barely got it and I haven't read it at all.
Okay. Thanks. Any other agenda review items or changes in the order of items from anybody tonight? Andrew, anything? Okay, good. All right. So now it's time for comments and questions from the public not related to items on the agenda. I think there's somebody in the audience. Please come up. Yeah, and make sure that you push the button on the base and it glows bright green. And make sure you identify yourself and where you live.
My name is Burton Wilkie. I'm a South Burlington resident. I live on Laurel Hill Drive, 25 Laurel Hill Drive. And I'm here to speak about some issues related to the pickleball courts in Szymanski Park. A couple of years ago, some friends of mine who live in South Laurel Hill and others got together to form a group to play a couple times a week, and we were playing on what was then tennis courts that were lined for pickleball, and had an enjoyable group activity. We didn't become aware of the new pickleball courts until they were actually being constructed. And at first, we were actually quite pleased that they had developed those. There were 4 instead of 2. And so we continued to play there for a short time until we were kind of displaced by people that, as far as I'm aware, were not South Burlington residents, but found that these were new courts that they liked and kind of took over. So it was a pretty large group, and we found that we were being told that we would have to come back after several hours if we wanted to play, because they were going to be playing during those 2 hours, which we found to be somewhat offensive. We thought that pickleball courts should be in a public park, should be shared, and there should be some kind of a system to allow us to play on the courts that exist in our city. Since that time, some of my friends in the group, some who live on Andrews, have experienced some really kind of rude behavior on the part of the people who frequent the pickleball courts. I witnessed one time a woman who was leaving the pickleball courts and apparently forgot something, so she sped down Andrews back to this park, and I actually confronted her and said that, this is a city street with children and bicyclists and walkers, and there's no sidewalks, and she apologized, but my friends who live on Andrews have said that that was not an uncommon occurrence. Not only speeding, but also people in this group, at least this one group that I'm aware of, making comments to children and being, quite frankly, rude to residents who live in the area. Sadly for us, we continue to play pickleball. We now go down to Shelburne and play pickleball on the tennis courts that are down there by the Shelburne School. I realize that there are other issues around the pickleball courts that affect people. There's certainly issues of parking there, and I think there needs to be some consideration both as to the location of pickleball courts in the city and also how there can be some kind of even guidelines for people in their use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Somebody else? Come on down.
Hello. Hopefully everyone got my email from Nalini from California. Did you all get that? Okay, so those are the real issues. That's the hardcore, hard life of people who live around these courts. I don't have a lot to say tonight because I've said a lot already, but I think I'd like to have some hope that you're truly considering moving the courts out of a neighborhood to a place where it's a physical, adaptable spot for this sport. Again, nothing against pickleball players. The sport does not belong in the neighborhood. I will not garden all summer. I will not go on my deck because of noise. I have to think about walking to school with my child and home and him being safe. And I'm tired. I'm tired of it. This is the 3rd year. It will go from April until the end of November, and that's a long time to be psychologically locked out of your own life. So I'd like to know that there's hope that you're considering moving it. And I will come to that meeting April 7th. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience? Anybody online have something to say tonight that's not on the agenda? Okay, then we're going to go on to item 5, which is Councilors Announcements and Reports on Committee Assignments and the City Manager's Report. Andrew, do you feel like reporting at all?
I'll just go quick, Tim. Thank you. Yeah, I was at the Federal Task Force Talent Hall on Saturday. I think a number of us were. Really discouraging. Mike Pichak led it, and Senator Peter Welch was there. And he said that whatever we think is happening in Washington, it's actually much worse. And, a lot of disturbing things. So, thankful for our city, thankful for our government, thankful for how civic and civil we are, and hopefully we'll get through this. And that's it.
Thank you, Andrew. Lori?
Yeah, it's been a fairly busy couple of weeks. On the 10th, had a Parks and Rec committee meeting, and just see if I can read my notes. There's going to be there are expanded summer camps. More sponsors have been recruited for sponsoring programs, including 802 Bank and others. The kids' events are blossoming, and we have Illuminate Vermont coming up on April 25th and 6th, and we are in need of volunteers. So anybody in the audience or in the council that would like to volunteer to help make Illuminate Vermont a great event, please get in touch with Adam, and that'll move forward. NRCC had a meeting, and very exciting to have 3 new, very talented members of the committee who were all there for that meeting, and actively engaged. It was pretty exciting meeting, and we reviewed the proposed questionnaire for the open space and parks master plans, which will be moving forward. There's going to be on Friday, May 9th. Oh, no, that's the wrong one, excuse me. But Friday night, May 9th, from 8:30 to 2:30, there's going to be a drinking water week fair for 4th and 5th graders. And they are also looking for volunteers. And then on the 11th, had a sextons meeting, which was a very effective meeting going through the proposed rules and regulations for the sextons, which have been previously reviewed by Colin, been updated, and at their next meeting, they will be voting to have those ready to go to Jesse and staff to find a home for the sextons and the cemetery work in the city. And then on the 11th, there was also a meeting of the CRO who are doing the Parks and Rec open space plan. And they are planning for an open house, which will be 5:30 on April 7th. So there will be time before the city council meeting for councilors to maybe attend some of that. And then I was also at the town hall meeting on Saturday with Mike Pichek, and it was a pretty humbling meeting. And I think we're going to have our work cut out for us over the next few years. So that's my report.
That's it? Okay. Thank you, Lori. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Tim. On the 11th, the Charter Committee met and had an opportunity to hear from Jesse's counterpart in Montpelier, who talked about the changes in their charter and how they've been implemented, and had some suggestions for us. Anne Lalonde pointed out, who was the chair of the committee, pointed out that Bennington actually had a ballot item at town meeting and on this issue, and the issue of all resident voting was actually voted down by less than 100 votes on March 4th. There are a number of operational issues that have been brought up, like the voter's oath, and then the checklists and registration information, all of which the committee is really evaluating and will come back with a recommendation on soon. I think their target is no later than maybe September or so. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but Anne will reach out. The committee has come up with a list of about a dozen organizations that serve the population that this charter change would target, and are intending to reach out first by email for additional information. So that is in progress right now in terms of due diligence on that charter change. The Housing Committee met on the 12th, and we got the legislature is very active in this area. And there's a list about 2 pages of different legislation that may go through. So I'm going to hold off and ask Nora Senecal at some point whether she'd like to have me share that before any formal presentation with council. But we did have Tom Bailey from the Economic Development Committee come in and invited the Housing Committee to participate in a meeting, their meeting in early April, also to share some of the civic soul work that's being done. And April is Fair Housing Month, so there will be a resolution presented by the Housing Committee then at our April 7th meeting. And then I think lastly, Nora asked me to share that, I'll just pass this around, that there will be a book conversation on the housing crisis by Jerusalem Demsis, who is a writer for The Atlantic, on Wednesday, April 16th, and it's a co-hosted event by the South Burlington Housing Committee and the South Burlington Public Library. And that is available in the library as well as on Amazon for less than $5, I think. So I told her I would pass that out to all my colleagues. And then lastly, I did also attend the P-Check Town Hall and share Andrew and Lori's comments about that. And I think it's really incumbent on us in local government to really represent the communities, the residents, and really focus on the good work that's being done here at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I attended a planning commission meeting where there was a lot of discussion about form-based codes having to do with heights and criteria around massing of buildings, the rules that could be used to break up the mass of a building at the street level. There was some street view modeling that Paul Conner did. I didn't hear the name of the tool that he used, but it used Google Earth, and he could actually then plant a three-dimensional box to represent a height of a building. So he played with that like on the U-Mall property right up against the road with like 10 stories or 6 stories, and just to give some mental perspective of what that kind of mass would look like on Dorset Street. Really interesting. Great for the commission to see that. As Lori and Andrew said, and I don't know, did you go to the P-Check Town Hall? Were you there? Okay, so we all went to, and Mike was there too, right? To the, and Mike, I'll get to you. All right, I forgot to. To the town hall on Saturday, which was, as Peter Welch said, as bad as you think things are, they're worse. And we had our state reps and one state senator there. But it was good for people to get together and voice their opinions. So I also was at a meeting here at City Hall with some staff and some East Terrace residents regarding the retaining walls. And we look forward to some progress on that, we hope. That's all I have. Mike, do you have something?
Yes, thank you. For me this past week, it's been very busy with the various meetings related to Green Mountain Transit as the commissioner. Participated as the board representative in our union discussions that are ongoing with drivers. I'm also participating in a finance committee meeting that took place next week, which was a segue to our board meeting that we'll have tomorrow, which is sort of an outflow of what a number of you have referenced, the issue of federal funding flowing from Washington to states, municipalities, or in this case, Green Mountain Transit. I've said this because it's already been made public by the head of Green Mountain Transit, so he authorized me to also share it again here in this meeting. One of the things that Green Mountain Transit has been accessing for the last few years is the so-called LONO Fund, which is an acronym for grant funding for electric buses. This has now been discontinued, and so therefore we are now reviewing what are our options. Currently, we have approximately 65 buses of which 7 were electric, 2 were sort of prototype buses called Protris, which really are not functional. That's not been a very good experience. But the second sort of round of buses electric buses we got called New Flyers, which have been performing well. The goal was to expand that. That obviously is not going to happen now because the way to do this was through the federal program that applied across the United States. So we're now going to have to make a decision. Most likely the discussion will begin tomorrow at the board meeting, carry on probably over into April. How do we proceed? Obviously, there are also some infrastructure issues that require for electric buses. That funding is also apparently would seem to have stopped. So do we basically stop? Obviously, we're not going to be able to add additional electric buses. They're much more expensive than diesel buses. But also the question is, how do we proceed with the infrastructure arrangements we've made? Can we finish them out, or do we also just stop those as well? But most likely, the trend would suggest that we probably have to go back to diesel buses. But again, there is no grant mechanism yet set up for that, and we will see if this LONO money that still exists can be used for those buses. So that's an immediate impact on what we can do as we're going through this. I think everyone knows this financial crisis with GMT and the effort to right-size it and move it towards a sustainable model. So this is obviously an additional challenge. And also just to be prudent with the possibility of the different additional federal fundings being withheld, we will also come up with a model or start working on a model that goes beyond the model that we had sort of worked out, which is so far going forward correctly. As you know, there was $200,000 cuts implemented for the fiscal year 25. Everything suggests that we're online to meet those cost savings. An agreement had been reached for 2026, where we have 1.2 million shortfall, the 500,000 in cuts that we were to basically make a decision on this April, and 700,000 was going to come from VTran to help us move forward as we move down the line for 27, 28 towards a sustainable model. But obviously, this is going to require some additional thinking based on the information I've just shared with you, and Clayton, our general manager, has shared more broadly. Also, as part of federal funding, there are certain requirements that come with it. And because of the requirement, we'll be ending our JEDI committee, which is our committee which is for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusive Committee, because federal funding prohibits money being used in this fashion. So what we will do, because part of it was to just get a sense of ridership experiences, we'll set up or proceed in establishing 3 committees based on Washington County, Franklin, Washington, just to be sure that we're constantly getting feedback from all our riders, what their experience is, since we are a service-based organization. So that's what I've been involved in, and we'll obviously keep everyone updated as the Green Mountain Transit sees South Burlington as a very important partner in this broader municipal effort to have good public transit, and for all the reasons we know, for our greater area.
Is there any news on the special assessment that could possibly happen?
Special assessment, as far as I know, I'm not sure. We were the first. There was also, I think, 3 others have already voted for it. Whether we'll need that special assessment, I think a lot of that is going to be revisited, because I think, as I just mentioned, the numbers have changed. We need to figure out what to do about further bus acquisition, since the assumed route of electric buses is not an option. So I'll definitely, if I find out more, I'll let you know.
Thank you, Mike. Jesse?
Yes, thank you. I have quite a few updates tonight. Reminder to the community that animal licenses are due on March 31st. Underlining some points a few others of you have made for the community. Our Parks and Recreation and Open Space Master Planning public workshop will be April 7th, as Lori said, at 5:30 in the Senior Center. The next night, April 8th at 5:30, the Economic Development Committee will host an all-committee meeting to get feedback on the Economic Development Strategic Plan process, which is great. I want to give you a quick update on the police chief hiring process and the advisory team. So as of about 10 minutes before this meeting, we have all the members of that advisory team confirmed and committed to participating, which is great. It's a really exciting group of community members. So we will be setting up our first meeting of that team towards the end of March. And just a reminder, you are represented by Elizabeth on that group. We are working on our recruitment brochure and finalizing our contract with the consultant that will help support this process. And we anticipate partners and the advisory team hosting listening sessions in April to get community feedback on the qualities we're looking for in our next chief. Andrew asked, I think it was Andrew asked a really good question at one of your last meetings that I did not know the answer to off the top of my head, and so made up a wrong answer. So I wanted to clarify that. You asked about how much of the federal dollars we've pulled down to date on the bridge project. So to date, we have spent $2.6 million on the bike ped bridge. We have received reimbursement from the federal government of $1.6 million of that. And for about $470,000 of that is bond or city funding. So we have another $500,000 to draw down in the next quarter. So we have received $1.6 million of what we have spent to date, but obviously that's a small number compared to the overall project budget. So I want to clarify that.
Jesse, was that received during this administration or the last one?
Last one. Quick update on Act 181 in the regional future land use map. This was part of the last biennium's housing work that probably the Housing Committee has talked about. Paul Connor has been working with the Regional Planning Commission on designing that draft regional future land use map. As you likely have heard, there are 11 categories that are being defined statewide, and those categories help impact the new qualifications for new town centers, village centers, downtown program, and the tier 1A and 1B possible exemption from Act 250. We anticipate that map will be released sometime this week. So heads up to the council if you start seeing that around. And the council will have an intentional conversation about that later in the spring. In addition to the paving contract, which is on your consent agenda tonight, Public Works is going to be bidding out two other significant projects this week, the Mary Street Sidewalk Project that's been under discussion for many years in City Center, and the City Center Boardwalk Project. So lots of work hitting the street. We also received our preliminary construction schedule for the Dorset Street Water Tank Project. So that's the second water tank at Dorset Street. We anticipate that the contractor will be on site by mid-April, so in about a month. Construction will be largely completed by the end of 2025 and put into service in May or June of 2026. So that is off and running. And then we also received the 90% plans for the Bartlett Bay wastewater treatment plant upgrade and are in the process of reviewing those. Lori mentioned this earlier as well, but just wanted to highlight, especially as Adam is in the room, that in FY24 we ran 9 summer camps. This year we are planning 16 summer camps, so really exponential increase in service to our young neighbors, which is really exciting. And then, well, I'm going to leave that comment to your new agenda item. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Mike, I'll give you a second, but just to remind everybody that your property taxes are due today. Might be a little late, but maybe if you snuck it in the box with today's date on the check, it might squeak by. I can't say yes or no, but anyway, so we should have said something earlier in the meeting, right? But Mike, you have something extra to add?
Yes, thank you, Tim. Jesse's comments reminded me of something I meant to say, but I also want to applaud you on the paving, a lot of work to hit our streets soon. That's pretty good. I like that. But you did remind me when you referenced to the bike path, just to give our residents heads up to keep an eye out for a good article that's going to be coming out in the paper, or I guess an opinion letter to the other paper. I think it's going to come out in the next edition from our Bike and Ped Committee. It does an excellent job of laying out, how our bike-ped infrastructure is, where do we need to go, the timing and the benefits, and including how pennies for path has helped us get there. So just to give them a heads up to keep an eye for it. It's very informative. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Mike. All
I
right.
got one follow-up question
Go
for
ahead.
Jesse, just on the funding for the bridge, the $500,000, or no, the 1.5 million, no, the $500,000 that's still outstanding. Is that past due at this point, or is it current?
No, it's just that we only pull down the requisitions quarterly, so we just haven't done that quarterly requisition yet.
Okay. Have you had any indication whether or not there's going to be difficulty?
Yes, the portal is currently closed,
Okay.
so
So that-
hopefully it will reopen.
Hopefully
but
it'll be reopened, but at this point, that $500,000 is in limbo.
as well as yes, and
Yes.
lots. Of
Well, I realize as
additional
well as the rest, but I'm talking about what we've already spent.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to move on to item 6, which is the consent agenda, and it's pretty long. So we'll start by saying we need to consider and sign the disbursements for the warrants and the water warrant. 6B, receive the fiscal year 2025 quarter 2, January 25 and February 25 financials. The narratives look good. 6C, which is approve a lease extension memorandum of understanding for public skating and the third-party agreement with the DPSA for the Cairns Arena, and authorize the city manager to execute all documents. 6D, which is approve a 2-year extension of the auditing services contract with R.H.R. Smith and Company for fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26, and authorize the execution of such contract upon review and approval of the city attorneys. 6E, approve a State of Vermont Class 2 roadway grant to pave Cheese Factory Road. 6F, approve the award of South Burlington FY26 annual paving program contract to Pike Industries. 6G, approve a municipal planning grant for application for the vision of strategic growth in South Burlington's southwest area. And that's all of the documents that are on the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to? Oops, go ahead. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. You have a motion and a second, but is there discussion?
Well, we did receive a number of questions on these. Would
Okay.
you like us to walk through those?
I think that'd be great.
All right, Martha, come on down. While Martha's coming down, there were 2 questions on the Cairns lease, and I know we have some folks here with us tonight on the Cairns lease. The questions were about the extent of the repairs needed and who is responsible for those, and the timing and impact on access. So the Dorset Park Skating Association is solely responsible for those improvements. And my understanding is that they are starting this month, but I think there are other folks either online or maybe in the room who can answer that more specifically if you would like that answer. And then there was a question about the term, the extension of the term of the 6th Amendment. So to clarify, the 5th Amendment actually expires on December 31st, 2840. So this is extending that for a decade to 2050 in order for them to amortize that debt over the life of a current agreement. So it is the 6th Amendment in about 30 years, but there's only a 10-year extension proposed.
And that was to facilitate the loan process, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who would like to add or course correct what I've said? I know Mr. Cairns is online.
Can you hear me?
Kinnan, yes?
Yes, that's for Rink 2, to take all the infrastructure out of Rink 2. It's going to take about 3 months to do the project. It's about $900,000 for the project from the total cost. And you're right. You said exactly right, Jesse. The amortization of an additional 10 years allows us to amortize the loan over 20 years. Did you say the question on originally was, what is the impact going to be on the facility? Rink 2 will be shut down from, I think it's April 1st for 3 months. So probably till the fall. So it'll be shut down for the summer.
come on up. There's a gentleman in the room who would like to talk.
Make sure the little green light's on when you touch the base there, and identify yourself too.
My name is Chris Cooper.
It's not.
It's not. Oh,
There you
now it is. My name is Chris Cooper. I'm one of the co-managers at Cairns. We will be shutting the second rink down on, I believe it's Monday, the 28th of April. And then we're hoping to have that back and running by July 12th.
And when I think the words were complete renovation of the equipment that creates the ice, is that what it is?
Yeah, correct. It's the floor that's underneath the rink,
Right.
that all has to be torn out.
And the compressors outside?
No, the
No.
compressors are fine.
Okay.
But all the piping that leads back into the compressor room will be replaced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that just the age of the pipes that's the factor, or is there some new efficiency gained by some new equipment? Or
I think it's a little bit of the age and the quality of the original materials. We just had a failure in the heating system that's supposed to keep the frost out of the floor.
oh, okay.
And so that heating failed. The only way to fix it is just to rip it all out and start over.
And that's the original system that was in there now.
Yes.
And how old is that now?
That was from 2001.
Oh, okay. So it's about 25 years or
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Are there other questions about any of the consent agenda?
Tim, just a couple of things. One, Jesse, I'm curious. So we're kind of getting a peek at fiscal year 25 in terms of, option tax and other revenues. And I know we were pretty aggressive for fiscal year 26. Are things kind of consistent? Are we comfortable that the projections, for 26 match with what we're seeing in 25?
So Martha's here and can answer that.
So at this point, we've already received 2 quarters of payments. And when we build the FY25 budget and 26, we actually right-side the local option taxes since the past few years we've been under budgeting the receipts. And as of now, if everything goes as per the 2 receipts that we have, per the 2 quarters receipts that we have actually received, it is looking as if we will either meet it or we are going to receive a little less than we actually projected for FY25.
Okay, so maybe you're saying maybe we were slightly too aggressive, but we'll see.
That's correct. Yes.
Can I just add? I think that was a very good question. You're talking about based on past performance. Obviously, the environment is shifting quite dramatically, or at least possibly maybe shifting. At least if we go by a lot of the reporting, including what we heard from the state treasurer, there's potential economic impact, including very much on tourism activity here. Local option tax is very much driven by either hotel or stuff. Have you factored in? Are you assuming continued performance in terms of in these areas, or are we assuming perhaps a drop in the amount of lot that is being generated by a decrease in economic activity, in particular tourism, hotels, motels, restaurants?
So I have not actually done an in-depth analysis of the tourists coming in and tourist reductions. The analysis that we just did is based on the past receipts and the expectation if everything continue as it has been in the past.
So there are a number of factors that you can't plan for, but until they become apparent, right? So consumer confidence is slipping, right? There's turmoil coming out of Washington. There's turmoil in the markets, right? There's a lot of stuff going on, right? So, but on the other hand, I mean, maybe it'll repeat the same as it was last year. I mean, through the pandemic, there was a real downturn. But as the tax receipts from Amazon increased, right, that ended up balancing out in 22. It was pretty strong, if I remember. So, and then local retail came back after that as well. So it's
true. But I would think that usually when you're facing headwinds, prudence is perhaps not a bad policy.
No, I totally agree. It's just, it's just hard to predict. So,
Tim, I have just one more question.
Sure.
So yeah, I know the paving contract came in at 825, and I guess we budgeted 1.25, and I think we then allocated another 150 from surplus, something like that. So we're like around 1.4. So do we kind of have 500,000-600,000, excess for paving that, is that?
So Tom, I believe, is online from the Sugar House. How very Vermonty of him.
Look at that.
Tom DePietro, Public Works Director. Councilor Chelnick, I started to summarize that on Friday morning and I haven't finished it yet.
Okay.
Less than $500,000. And recall council made a decision to put some money aside for safe routes to school type projects as well.
Yep.
So before your next meeting, I'll have a full accounting.
Okay, great. Is it possible, Tom, that maybe you won't need that surplus allocation for paving, given where this contract came in at?
I'm not sure which surplus allocation you mean. So typically what will happen is we'll bid the amount of work so we know we'll be safely at or just under what we have budgeted or available. And then we'll do a change order to add in some additional roads. There's always, of course, as you know, more paving that can be done in the city.
Right.
But we could talk about change orders in the future. Tonight, we want to get that initial contract locked in at the price that we were given, which is pretty good.
Yeah, no, sure. It's a really good price.
And go from there. So that's why I was starting to prepare that summary.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Tom also.
Sure. Go ahead.
And I don't know, Tom, if you saw Ryan Doyle's email that he sent out today, but concerned about some of the paving that happened previously that doesn't have proper crowns and that has stormwater drains higher than the road bed. And some of those were from Pike contracts. And do we have controls in place to make sure that we don't run into those kinds of issues going forward?
Yeah, I am not familiar with any email that Mr. Doyle may have sent today, though I could tell you our Deputy Director of Operations, an engineering technician, oversee paving operations in the city when they're out there. So I can look into that and respond as appropriate.
Okay.
But I don't comment on email I haven't read yet.
That
Fair.
email did come in at 6:28
Yes.
tonight, so it would be
fair,
really
fair
respectful
that
if
you
we
haven't
give-
seen it. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, Tom, and maybe hear back that the issues he's talked about are addressed in this upcoming paving for
As you like.
the new paving. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Any other questions?
Can we, I think Martha, maybe you were going to respond to a couple of the questions I asked. If we could get those covered.
Yeah, so there were two questions on the warrant. One was on the state of Vermont 3-acre site block 19K. That is the name of the grant that funded a stormwater project. And generally when we are making payments, we name them so that it is a lot easier to track expenses related to specific projects. So that's why the description is in there as 3-acre. I think Tom, has he gone? It looks like Tom is gone, but it says stormwater projects.
What's the project? I'm sorry. What's the project again?
So in the state of through the state of Vermont, there is an identified site that looks at the stormwater infrastructures and needed to be upgraded. So it's an upgrade for a stormwater projects within the city.
Tom, are you still on?
I still here. I missed the initial question. I apologize.
So the question is, what is the 19,000 that's on the warrant this pay period? Which specific stormwater project is that for?
Oh, I would have to. Do we know who the vendor is, Martha?
So the payment relates to the 3-acre stormwater projects. That's the grant funded.
The majority of our large capital projects are grant funded, so I would need to take a closer look to tell you exactly what that one was. I can do that.
I
We have
think
a
if
lot
it's,
of stormwater projects.
yeah, no, to me, if
underway.
it's clarified as a stormwater project, that's enough clarity for me because it wasn't clear what that was for.
But you had another question too?
Yeah, there was
Yes,
another
the
one,
unclaimed property.
unclaimed property taxes. So per the state rule, this is an exercise that we go through every year. Per the state rule, over the 24 month, if there are checks that are outstanding, those are paid back to the state. So those are the payment that we issue, the city issue out. The payee or the owner of those payments have not cashed the check. We've reached out to them, sent mail at least 3 times. It's required that we keep the records. So we've done our part to actually reach out to the owners so they could cash the check, and those have not been cashed. So that total is made up of about 6 different payments that have not been cashed to date from 2023.
Got it. I thought that was city receiving, so thank you for the clarification. And then the last one I had was on the if it's material, what would the shortfall be in planning, zoning, and DRB revenues for given the permitting fees that came in the first 6 months? Do we know?
Yes, we do. So in the financial statements, narratives, budget narratives, Paul Connor, the planning and zoning director, did mention that we are actually seeing more coming in right now compared to the last 6 months. The goal and the hope is that the receipts are going to be a lot higher than the past 6 months. We might not actually meet the projection in the budget, but it is going to be a little higher than what we've received in the past 6 months.
So we're not anticipating a material shortfall at this point.
Chances that it might not be material or high, but it might also be material. There are inquiries, like he says. Some of them have not really come to a permit request. If they do come and ask for the permits, those will definitely go up. There has also been some permits issued to date that might bring that amount up. And Paul just showed up. He might want to clarify that.
Paul Connor, Planning and Zoning Director. There are 2 main categories of where our revenue comes on the permitting side. One is for zoning permits, which is for as folks prepare to do construction, and the other is for development review fees, which is typically DRB applications. We did see an uptick in the most recent reporting on the zoning permit side. And so that one I think is getting closer to the sort of where we expect to be for the year. The development review side was pretty light in that report, and I think, as Martha said, we have a number of inquiries starting to happen, but whether those materialize in this fiscal year or next fiscal year is hard to know. I think given how low we were in the first couple of quarters, we'll probably have some level of a shortfall in the development review fees, but how much we will know more in a couple months.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we'll go on to item 7, which is discuss and possibly approve a continued conversation with the Councilor engagement plan. Is Andy online?
I don't think so.
If he's not, we can still discuss it.
Yep, I'm happy to take
Okay.
this one. So at your last meeting, you asked us to put together a potential schedule of conversations with a counselor for you through September. So Andy has worked with Recreation and Parks and the library to identify upcoming events that would be good to have a table at to go to where the people are. And then also picked a Saturday for you to do your regular conversations with a counselor, holding time over the summer for possible requested community or HOA meetings that we would advertise as an option and have people request those. And then he used AI to randomly assign you all to, to dates. We then had to tweak it a little once we understood holiday schedules a bit more. So that is what is in front of you. We're happy to change it as much as you would like.
Was this his first AI experiment?
Oh no, Andy is very
He's been,
technical.
okay. I didn't know if that was related to the new AI.
He did do it
Programming
after
you
the
were doing.
last AI workshop.
Okay, okay.
I think it looks good.
I think it looks good. I have no problems with it.
Looks good to me.
Motion to approve.
Is Thursday the 29th, is that the day before the Memorial Day weekend? Just curious.
No, it's the
No,
weekend
it's the
after.
week after.
Memorial-
Okay, that's
Memorial
right.
Day's really early this week.
Right, that's right. And that the weekend before is the weekend of the marathon, the VCM. Okay.
I'd be surprised if we don't end up having to do some bartering around days going
I
forward, but
assume as much.
essentially it looks great to me.
With the same caveat that Lori said, we will obviously all have to work together to cover each other if business or holidays pull us away.
If
I
none
move
of
to
this
approve
changes,
the proposed schedule.
was it a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second?
We have a second. Any other discussion?
So I will just note that we are going to start advertising this so we can also recruit other folks who would like you to attend their events.
Yep.
So we are happy to rearrange the representatives whenever you would like, but we will be publishing
You
these.
don't have to because AI produced the schedule. So
Yeah, so it's perfect.
AI is pretty perfect, right? So, yeah. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Good work, Andy. And now we'll move on to item 8, which is consider amending the allocation process to award the FY25 social service funding and provide direction to staff. With Martha's back again.
Hello, Martha Machar, Finance Director. So the proposal that is before you stem from last year discussions where the question was asked on what the process is on how the social services allocated budget is allocated to the organizations. At that point, we stated that there was a freeze on how that is allocated and has been allocated to a specific number of organizations over the years, and you wanted to see a new process this year. And therefore, we came up with an application process and some of the requirements that you had suggested that you would want to see when these funds are allocated to these organizations. So before you is just a timeline of how that process would work and what the requirement would be when those are put out in the application process. So we will be coming out up with a simple forms that we will send out to for the organization to fill, and then you will be reviewing those applications and making an allocations and recommendations on how much each of the organization received.
Martha, where will we get the list of organizations to send to? Is just the existing organizations, or are we gonna try and like identify all the tax exempts in the area, or?
So there is a list of the 15 organizations that we've sent, and there has been a good number of inquiries from different organizations that have not received before. But given that this is also a pretty small amount, we will also put this out so that it's not just limited to the to those number of organizations that have received. We'll put it on the possibly on the other paper or on the city's news and see who submit an applications.
Okay.
So current recipients will receive some communication saying that this is going to be the new process going forward, and then there will be extra communication for new nonprofits who would be seeking donations, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Everybody think this is I guess this is going to work, right? Look good, Andrew. You're nodding. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the new process for social services awards.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Now we're on to item 9, which is discuss and approve the annual review of the city manager. I know this has taken some time. but I sent out the two documents, and I'm going to read the public document for everybody tonight to let the public understand what process we went through and how we derived the review and the results. So in late January, the city of South Burlington underwent an annual evaluation process of city manager Jesse Baker. The city staff were given a form to complete that had 6 sections to rate numerically from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, and 3 general questions for written comment. Jesse's highest average score was very, very close to 5 and was given for the category of a highly effective manager. But City Council had a different form. They were given a form that had 51 sections with numerical rankings in the same 1 to 5 category, and then 5 questions for written comments. Jesse's mean scores, that means average, were very close to 5 for the highest ratings for areas for things like governance knowledge, ethical conduct, dedication to service, and budget management. And the results were from both groups were collated and presented to council for discussion and summarization. The results of the review were excellent with very high numerical scores and complimentary comments. Council also gave constructive feedback and praised Jessie for a productive and professional 2024 and reiterated their appreciation of her work. We're very happy to have you as our city manager, and we look forward to the future. And your current contract is through June of 2026, just for the record. So, anybody want to add any other comments tonight?
Just briefly, I think several of us noted that there were 3 new counselors that came on board last year, and I think, Jesse, you did a remarkable job really responding to our various needs to be brought up to speed, onboarding, and I know I appreciate that. I think I speak for Lori and Mike as well, that was above and beyond, and I think it helped get all of us up to speed and more effective as a council. Thank you.
Any other comments? Andrew? No? So I think we need a motion to approve this annual review.
I move that we approve this annual review. It is well received and well deserved annual review.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll just say thank you, City Manager Baker, very much. And so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is
thank you.
unanimous. Great. All right, we're going to move on to item 10, which is review the significant agenda topics for the council's April 7th council meeting.
Great. So I bulleted out for you here the significant agenda items coming up. So on April 7th, Bettina Magaz, our climate action program manager, will be presenting a report on the progress to implement the climate action plan. She will also be bringing you a report and potential first reading of an update to the heating and service water heating ordinance. You will receive the final equity and outreach toolkit from planning and zoning, to have a discussion about the council's role in implementing that. And then you will also receive an update on the rental registry program and discussion of future capital. New since I published this agenda is also, it may be ready for April 7th. We are hoping so. A concern has arisen around the undergrounding of upgraded utility lines for electrification, and our current ordinance language and the cost to underground the connections between the mains and the homes when they need to be upgraded. So Bettina is trying to understand the scope of that problem citywide, working with Green Mountain Power, and may bring you a briefing on that with her other climate reporting.
So this is for upgrading electrical panels in residence.
Nope, this is for, we have an ordinance that requires the undergrounding of utilities citywide.
New utilities.
New utilities citywide, for new construction. And when those utilities have been underground and the connection to the home is underground, but the connection to the home needs to be upgraded for more electrification, but is before a certain date. There's no conduit in the ground, it's a hard wire in the ground, and that is a very expensive upgrade.
I know.
So we're trying to understand what percentage of homes may have that impact, and some options for you all about how we want to handle that.
Okay, so this is for residential.
Well, it's the
Primary.
issues are coming from residents in the
Yeah.
community. It could
Could be commercial.
could be commercial as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's really bad when residential underground power systems fail. It happened in my brother's neighborhood in Maryland about 5 or 6 years ago, and they ended up having to put temporary cables on top of the ground so people could have power. But these cables that were put down by the contractor originally, 40 years ago, were inadequate, and then they just degraded over time. That's not the issue here, but having to deal with underground stuff is difficult if you have to go back and do something. So, okay, thank you, Jesse. We're now at 10.2. Just a reminder that I probably won't be attending that meeting. If I have a chance to log in, I will, but it depends on what we're doing. Now we're at 10.2, which is the new agenda item that was asked for by Lori to talk about the UPenn growth management proposal. Lori?
Yeah, so I apologize for this being a last minute addition to the agenda. This is a process that's been going on since last fall. And my understanding was that Jesse and Mr. Daniels were going to be having a get together, and the discussion came that it's prudent for it to come before council to approve that pre-work so that it was something that could be presented at our April retreat. And I serendipitously got in touch with Professor Daniels last October after reading an article in the New York Times. I think I've given most of you that background. And Professor Daniels UPenn just completed a studio for Barry, Montpelier, and Plainfield, which deliverable was very well received and actionable. And Professor Daniels suggested that he and UPenn graduate students might be interested in doing a studio for South Burlington. Initially, it sounded like it would be something that would be have a cost associated with it, but other than involving staff time, this is something that UPenn would be doing at no cost to the city, and it is in line with the desire that has been talked about, moving a growth management plan forward. And it's on tonight's agenda to determine whether or not council is interested in having Jesse meet with Professor Daniels to get more information outlined to present to us at the April retreat, so we can decide whether this is something to move ahead with, which would be starting in the fall of 2025. I'm happy to answer any other questions that people have about it.
Can I share a few sentences on why I asked Lori to
Please.
advocate for this going on the agenda? So at your FY25 policies and strategies retreat, we had a long conversation about potential of doing a growth management plan. On your approved set of strategies is a series of key questions that you outlined during that conversation. As we have been welcoming Anna, our new data manager, onto the team and working with Assembly Theory on kind of setting her up for success, one of the things we've been working on is putting together a process that aligns to those policies and strategies efforts. That would include, at a very high level, looking backwards for the last 2 decades of the growth we've had and the impacts that has had, as well as setting up a public conversation about how we look forward together and doing that analysis to look forward. I also think the community needs to have a conversation about defining what a growth management strategy or plan or program is. I think it's a phrase that's used a lot but doesn't have a lot of shared definition. Lori has, as he just mentioned, been talking with this professor. He has offered us this service. We certainly can insert this instead of the staff work that we have been working on. I'm not sure it's worth us continuing the staff work we've been doing and doing this effort. And because this is a pretty significant undertaking and would be hopefully something that would be highlighted and celebrated by our community, I wanted, before we actually make a staffing commitment to work on this, to have the full council get on board with that university approach versus staff approach. So I think what Lori and I are hoping is that, I think what Lori's hoping and what would be helpful to me is for you guys to say you want me to spend some time working with the professor in the next couple of weeks with the intention of moving forward with this effort as our growth management strategy for the next 9 months or so, and therefore not using other staff resources to do this. I'm happy to do that if that is the will of the council. I do want to note, as you guys are submitting questions for the retreat or topic areas for the retreat, a lot of what you are submitting are things we are working on, but we are not planning on having anyone there but for Steve and I, and not planning on doing any other prep work to prepare for that retreat. Mm-hmm. So I think we are setting ourselves up for some hard, frustrating conversations in that model. Stop talking there.
Is it okay if I make a comment? I looked at this when you first brought it up, Lori, as sort of the potential to augment work, and it might be a different perspective or an orientation that might complement the work, some of the work that was being done. At the end of the day, it's a student project. So to sort of put it on the level that some of the other consultants that the city has engaged with, like Civic Soul, and I think some of the other partners, the master plan on open space and parks, by way of example, I think would be inaccurate in my mind. It's not at the same level in my mind. So to say that it would become the basis off of which policy decisions might be made, I would struggle with that personally. I did anticipate that we would have more conversation at the retreat about kind of understanding what our shared expectations are with a growth management plan. And I know that what's proposed, I briefly read it like a second ago, and I'm looking at the message that Jesse sent out that highlights the city plan objectives. They're not completely in sync with those. So if it were to be the sole source of recommendations, it would have to be complemented by other work, and I feel like we should have that conversation before we would engage in anything with any consultant. So and afterwards we'd understand, hey, where does this fit in? Where would we need to partner with somebody else? And do we understand that these would have to be complementary pieces of information? I did not anticipate a scenario that staff might be asked to do more with a consultant like this than what we had identified in the city plan. So if it was a choice, and I'm not sure you're saying that, Jesse, but if it were a choice of staff doing the work and an outside organization with some staff support, and maybe I should just stop there. Can I clarify, is that what you're saying, Jesse, with the comment you just made?
So in my mind, it is a choice, and perhaps it doesn't need to be after more conversation, but it feels, if they are doing work as outlined in here to project future growth, which they're going to need a lot of information from us on, and to look at the LDRs and make recommendations, that if we are partnering with them to provide them that data, we're not going to then turn around and do the same analysis ourselves. So we wouldn't. So I think it would be, if this is the time commitment for the next 9 months, then we can focus on this and partner with them and give them the data that they need to do their analysis. But I think it would be feel a little spinning to then just redo the same analysis, if that makes sense.
And by way of example, when I looked at the number one on this, and we highlighted in here, and I've felt we needed to work with the school system to really come up with shared demographic data. This really isn't coming up with our demographic data. It's using some, slow, moderate, and faster growth, just applying numbers, but they don't represent what we actually expect to happen or anticipate happening working with the school district. So I have reservations about committing to this, or committing even Jesse prematurely to having conversations, unless it's, from your perspective, Lori, it's to flush out some specificity around where this might fit into conversations we'd have at the retreat. But I really feel like that conversation needs to happen first. I'll stop there.
So, I think the only decision we're making now, right, is whether Jesse should spend a little bit of time getting some info for us to have a full discussion at the retreat. And based upon what I've seen from this group and their successes with other towns, doing that little bit of work seems to me to make all the sense in the world. And then we'll have a full discussion around it at the retreat.
So I didn't understand exactly what he said. Could you restate, Lori?
He said he thinks that having them do work makes all the sense in the world. Is what I heard him say.
Oh, okay.
And to answer you, Elizabeth, I don't envision between now and our retreat Jesse doing work with Professor Daniels to actually start implementing anything, but rather to look at how this could augment, support, leverage the work that we're doing, and perhaps provide a lot of added value to us in this process. I don't know if you looked at the reports that they gave to the other 3 cities in Vermont, but they did an impressive amount of work. And Professor Daniels, incidentally, lived in South Burlington, went to high school in South Burlington, worked extensively on Act 250, and really understands the development processes that are happening in Vermont. So they're not coming at this with no knowledge of the background of our city. And I am excited about the idea of having a group provide this additional support for us, and frankly free up staff to be able to do work that runs parallel with it and supports it.
So I guess my question for Jesse, it doesn't have to be answered tonight, is how much support and help do they need to get the data that they want? And we can't answer that, but that's a question. Is like, you just email them the LDRs, you email them, you give them access to a bunch of web resources that maybe the data is out there, but maybe some of the data is not out there, but has to be assembled, right? Depending upon, as they start to pull the string, right, that it might get longer and longer. So that's one concern, is how much information they need and how much staff time they take. On the other hand, having a complementary assessment could be beneficial. I guess the question is, how many towns or small cities have they done with this process, even outside of Vermont, over the last 10 years? Has this been ongoing work, for these students, and other students before them?
This is work that UPenn has been doing regularly. But again, the questions you're asking, I would hope, would be some of the background information that Jesse would get together in speaking with Professor Daniels, so we would have answers at our retreat and be able to look and say, yes, this is really a good parallel track, or no, we really don't want to go that way.
Okay.
But so that we have the information to make that decision And Professor Daniels is prepared to have this be in their 2025-2026 school year. So that sort of speaks to the timing that would be going.
Do we need to have a conversation with Professor Daniels remotely with the council? I'm just asking at the retreat. Is that something that would he be available to talk with us?
That's a question that Jesse could ask him, or I could ask him. I know that he's prepared to work. He wants to work collaboratively to come up with something that'll actually be a benefit to the city and not a burden or a cost, but an actual asset.
One thing that would be helpful to me would be to get links to at least the Barry Montpelier presentation, because I have not seen that. And then if there were other towns, as you mentioned.
I sent those to you. You have them in your email. I sent them to all of the council, both when they were doing the presentation and then afterwards, but I can resend those.
Okay, then I apologize because I have not seen that, Lori, but it would be helpful if you wouldn't mind sending that again.
I'd be happy to resend those.
Yeah, one of the concerns I have, there's sort of no financial analysis in here too around kind of looking at a, is it a positive incremental revenue model when it looks at the potential development? So if there's recommendations around infrastructure, is there some link to that in terms of the tax base, for instance, whether it's commercial or residential? So there would be gaps that whatever gaps have to be filled would have to buy off on the data that are presented. And that's where my concern is not having a cohesive service provider with this growth management project. And I'm not opposed to having more conversation, but I certainly couldn't make a commitment. And I think we owe it to ourselves to make sure we're all on the same page as to what we expect with growth management.
I don't think any of us have enough information to make a decision at this point. Do we want to get enough information so we can do that?
So one piece of homework would be to get a good collection of 3 to 5 previous assessments that they've done, whether in-state or out-of-state, so we can review them and then ask the city manager.
Let me also join this conversation because it's been going back and forth. The reason I haven't spoken up is because, I literally saw this 5 minutes before coming here, this email that was sent at 4:08 today. I prepared over the weekend, was taking house guests to the great museum in St. Johnsbury. Really encourage everyone to go there if they haven't. It's a great place to take out state guests too. There's definitely, I'm assuming what we're hearing here is a chance to reflect on perhaps some additional information. No one's making any decision. And I would think also at the retreat, it's not necessarily making a decision. I would also, not only some of the background information that Tim and Elizabeth referenced, and I also have the same concerns about sole sourcing this or not looking at other options and what are the trade-offs with the other options that would bring us in terms of expertise, background, or are we going to have multiple looks and have complementary work? I think all of those are the discussions we have to have. So, with that big caveat in mind, I think our intent was to basically look at the issue of how we basically have effective growth in this community. What is the balance? How do we do it so we have a net gain? I think it becomes even more important now that it's clear that federal funding is going to be of a different dimension going forward. That's going to put more pressure on us to basically look at state and municipal resources and partnerships, probably with other municipalities as well as a nonprofit and business to basically continue to maintain the excellent quality of life and services for all members of our community in South Burlington. So if it's framed at that kind of discussion, I think then that would be the right approach.
So, Jesse, have you had a conversation with this professor at all?
No.
Does the council want to ask you to at least have one conversation and find out how big of a data pool they require and if they can quantify like how many hours of staff time their previous projects have taken? I mean, is that the kind of question we would want to ask so that at the retreat we would have some more information so we have a better understanding about what the demand would be on staff?
In the email stream between Jesse and Professor Daniels and myself, Jesse had talked about, and Professor Daniels had talked about setting up sometimes to have some conversations. And I would like to encourage that to happen so that we get the information on what he's offering and how it dovetails with what we're doing and supports what we're doing. And so that we can then decide whether it's something that we want to move forward with.
And Lori, and by the way, is my microphone working okay?
Yes.
Okay. Is the proposal from Professor Daniels fixed in stone, or
Not
if
at
there
all.
are, additions, tweaks we want to make, coming out of the retreat, are those things that we can do?
I think it's absolutely a proposal that he's put forward, showing the breadth of the kind of work they can do. And he's looking to have conversation to flesh out what an actual studio would do for us.
Okay. So if we wanted to give him actual data, for, student population growth, obviously he'd be amenable to that.
I think if, it sounds like we're creeping towards him having to do something here. Here we're basically, as I understand it, to try to find out what he would do, what would be his approach, perspective, resources, history, background. Jesse would also give us perspective of whatever the other alternatives they are there complementary, are there complementary paths, etc. But I think whatever this process going forward, just like other processes we do, should be led by the city manager to do the due diligence, look at the options, and then come back to us to allow us then to try to see what would be the best decision going forward on this specifically or collectively.
Isn't that what I'm suggesting?
So Mike,
I was just asking for data.
Okay,
and sharing.
yeah.
I'm thinking we're getting ahead of the game.
No, we don't get ahead of the game.
No, Mike, that was the purpose of my question, to understand, whether or not this proposal is set in stone, so it's something Jesse can talk to about and provide us that data, not to reach a decision. But I gotta say, I also applaud Laurie for his initiative to move this forward. I think that it's incumbent upon all of us not to solely rely on staff for things like this. And I think this is really good, and I thank Laurie for moving it forward.
By the way, I think you almost had that famous scene of having his little kid come in.
Almost.
So do we need to make a motion on this, or do we just direct Jesse to, how do you want us to move forward?
I think I'm hearing the majority of you, maybe not all of you, say you want me to do some work on this.
A little footwork.
Yeah.
And then
At a minimum, get some links to other presentations.
well, that would be you. You could do that now, right?
I have links to the presentations that were done for Barry, Montpelier, and Plainfield.
Can you get more?
Well, I'm leaving tomorrow for 2 weeks. So
that's okay. Just delay your trip.
Yeah. Okay. No, but I was going to say,
They don't have internet where you're going?
I get back April 1st, so there's still plenty of time to do that.
Okay.
I would be happy to do that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Although 3 studies seem to me to be a pretty good, set of things to look at too.
I reviewed those studies, what they did for those towns around flood resiliency. They're pretty good reports, and you can't beat the price.
Yeah.
But again, I would really hope that the whole purpose is to get a presentation from Jesse, who has looked at all the various options of what our city needs, who understands all the challenges and all the obligations better than any of us, and to give her a presentation on. I mean, that's always been my understanding of what the city management and staff, are here for, to help give us a succinct, clear, comprehensive briefing.
Well, the other question is when did Barry receive that report? Is it Barry Town or Barry City?
Plainfield.
Barry City.
Plainfield.
And
It was Berry City, Plainfield, and Montpelier.
when did they receive that?
They received them
Last fall.
think it was like November.
Oh, so recently.
Yeah, these are
Okay.
new,
Right,
and
so
they've already
they
started
haven't really had a
implementing
chance
some
to
of it.
like use the data yet, or are they using it? Or
I believe both Montpelier and Plainfield have already started to implement some of the recommendations.
okay, all right. And have you talked to anybody in those city halls?
I have not talked directly to them. I did speak with the director of the Vermont Bond Bank, who is also a UPenn graduate and was involved in putting this together and worked with them. And all the input I got was pretty positive.
Okay. All right. So you're hearing a majority plus ... to take a good look at this, but we'll discuss at the retreat. Right, and you'll be back for that, and I'll be back too. So, any other comments? Okay. We're going to move on to item 11, which is to convene as the Liquor Control Commission. Can I have a motion to enter liquor control?
I so move that we enter Liquor Control Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Andrew? All right, it's unanimous. We are now in liquor control. So we need a motion to approve a first-class liquor license for the DoubleTree, and a second-class liquor license, a third-class liquor license, outside consumption permit for Olive Garden Restaurant 1520, first-class restaurant bar license, and third-class restaurant bar license, Walgreens tobacco substitute endorsement, Vermont Pool and Bar first-class liquor license, third-class liquor license, first-class restaurant bar license, third-class restaurant bar license, outside consumption permit for Sugar Snap LLC, first-class commercial caterer license, and third-class commercial kitchen license.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous again. I need another motion to come out of liquor control.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous again. And so now we are at other business. Is there any other business tonight? I'll take that as a no. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Andrew, I hope you feel better.
Thank you, Tim. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.